When Femi remarried, he hoped for a fresh start. His first wife's death had left him heartbroken, but his daughter, Kemi, was his solace. As a traveling engineer, Femi believed his new wife, Busy, would care for Kemi like her own. Busy, a beautiful but sharp-tongued woman, moved into their modest Lagos home with her son, Tond. At first, she seemed caring, but Kemi noticed the cold glares and dismissive tones. Femi, oblivious to the tension, focused on providing for his family. When Femi left for work, Busy's true nature was revealed. She criticized Kemi constantly, calling her lazy and ungrateful. She forced her to scrub the floors, wash heavy loads of laundry, and clean the gutters without rest. Tond, encouraged by his mother, treated Kemi like a servant, often laughing as she struggled. When Kemi complained of hunger, Busy would mock her. "Work harder, and maybe I'll feed you," she sneered. One evening, Kemi was washing dishes after preparing dinner for Busy and Tond. Her stomach growled loudly, but there was no food left for her. Exhausted, she accidentally dropped a glass, and it shattered on the floor. Busy stormed into the kitchen, her face twisted with anger. "You clumsy fool," she screamed, slapping Kemi hard across the face. Kemi stumbled, holding back tears. "I'm sorry, Ma," she whispered, but Busy wasn't done. She dragged Kemi outside and made her pick up broken glass with her bare hands. Blood dripped from Kemi's fingers, but Busy didn't care. Later that night, Kemi sat in her tiny room, staring at the bruises on her hands. She felt trapped, desperate for her father's return. Little did she know, Busy had no intention of letting her live peacefully. A darker plan was brewing. Busy tightened her grip on Kemi's life. The chores became harder, and the punishments harsher. Kemi was given only scraps to eat, often the leftovers from Busy and Tond's meals. Her once vibrant face grew pale, her eyes hollow with hunger. The neighbors began to notice her deteriorating state, but when anyone asked, Busy lied. "She's a rebellious child," Busy would say, shaking her head. "We are doing everything to discipline her." Kemi tried to find comfort at school, but even there, her energy waned. She couldn't focus on her studies and struggled to keep up. Her teacher, Mrs. Olufemi, asked if something was wrong, but fear kept Kemi silent. She knew Busy would make her pay if she spoke. One day, after a particularly grueling morning of cleaning the gutters, Kemi fainted. Busy found her sprawled on the ground and doused her with cold water. "You think playing sick will save you from work?" Busy hissed. Kemi tried to plead. "Ma, please. I need food," she whispered weakly. But Busy only laughed. "Food is for those who deserve it," she said, walking away. That night, Kemi decided to write a letter to her father. In it, she begged him to come home, to save her from the torments she endured. She slipped the letter into his travel bag, hoping he would read it before it was too late. Femi returned briefly to pick up documents for a new project. Kemi watched him from a distance, her heart pounding with hope. But as she saw Busy slip into the room where his bag lay, her stomach twisted. Later, Kemi discovered the letter was gone. Her heart sank as she realized Busy had intercepted it. The next day, Busy confronted her. "You think you can outsmart me," she hissed, burning the letter in front of her. "You'll learn your place in this house." Busy's cruelty reached its peak one fateful evening. After a minor disagreement, she accused Kemi of stealing money from her purse. Kemi protested, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't take anything, Ma," she cried. But Busy didn't listen. She grabbed Kemi's few belongings and threw them into the street. "Get out of my house," she yelled. Tond stood in the doorway, smirking as Kemi was forced onto the dark streets of Lagos. With nowhere to go, Kemi wandered aimlessly through the city. The streets were harsh, filled with dangers she had never imagined. At first, she tried sleeping in a park, but the cold and noise drove her away. Eventually, she found shelter in an abandoned building, its walls crumbling and covered in graffiti. Kemi scavenged for food in trash bins and drank water from public taps. Her body weakened further, and illness began to set in. She clung to the hope that her father would return and find her, but the days turned into weeks, and no one came. Femi came home after completing his latest project, eager to see his daughter. But when he called out for Kemi, the house was silent. "Where is she?" he asked Busy. Busy feigned sadness. "She ran away," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I think she fell in love with a boy and left with him." Femi was stunned. "That's not possible," he said. "Kemi wouldn't leave without telling me." He reported her disappearance to the police, but days passed without any leads. Meanwhile, Kemi's health deteriorated in the abandoned building. Her body ached, and her fever worsened. She could barely move, let alone search for help. One day, a young boy named Sei, who scavenged the area, found her. "You're sick," Sei said, offering her a piece of bread. "You can't stay here." Kemi tried to explain her situation, but her voice was weak. Sei promised to help her, but even he had limited resources. Femi refused to give up on his daughter. He hired private investigators and personally visited nearby neighborhoods, showing Kemi's picture to anyone who would listen. He couldn't shake the feeling that Busy was hiding something, but he had no proof. Rumors about a sick girl in the abandoned part of town began to circulate. Femi's search had drawn attention, and one day, a kind neighbor mentioned hearing about a girl living in the shadows of the old textile factory. Femi's heart raced, but Busy overheard the conversation and grew nervous. Later that evening, Busy called her brother, Jide, a known troublemaker. "We have a problem," she whispered. "If Femi finds that girl, I'm finished. You need to take care of her." Jide agreed, his greed fueled by the promise of payment. Sei returned to the abandoned building with food for Kemi, but he wasn't alone. Jide had followed him, suspecting that Sei was helping someone. When Jide confronted Sei, demanding to know about the girl, Sei lied and led him in the wrong direction. Kemi, too weak to move, overheard their voices. She realized someone was looking for her, but she didn't know if it was friend or foe. She stayed hidden, praying that Sei's quick thinking would save her. Femi couldn't shake the feeling that Busy was hiding something. Her sudden nervousness and frequent phone calls made him uneasy. He began secretly following her, hoping to uncover the truth. Meanwhile, he continued searching for Kemi, visiting shelters and hospitals. Each time he came up empty-handed, his resolve grew stronger. He promised himself he wouldn't rest until he brought her home. One night, an elderly woman named Mama Besarat found Sei wandering the streets with food. Curious, she asked him what he was doing. Sei hesitated but decided to trust her. He told her about Kemi and her condition. Mama Besarat, a retired nurse, insisted on seeing the girl. When she found Kemi, she was horrified by her state. "This child needs medical help," she said. But Kemi refused to go to a hospital, terrified of being found by her stepmother's accomplices. Femi noticed discrepancies in Busy's stories. One day, he overheard her talking to Jide about handling the girl. His suspicions were confirmed. Busy knew where Kemi was. Confronting her, he demanded the truth, but Busy denied everything, claiming she was talking about a family issue. Determined to uncover the truth, Femi secretly followed Busy on her next outing, leading him to a dingy bar where Jide often stayed. Jide, frustrated by his inability to find Kemi, decided to take drastic measures. He planned to burn down the abandoned building, thinking it would eliminate any evidence of her existence. Sei overheard the plan and ran to warn Mama Besarat. That night, Sei and Mama Besarat helped Kemi escape just moments before Jide arrived. From a safe distance, they watched as flames engulfed the building. Kemi's heart sank, realizing how close she had come to death. Femi's suspicions led him to hire a private investigator who uncovered Busy's secret dealings with Jide. The investigator also discovered witnesses who had seen Kemi in the abandoned building. Femi was devastated to learn how his daughter had been treated. Femi confronted Busy in a heated argument. This time, she couldn't keep up the lies. "Fine," she screamed. "That girl was a burden. She deserved everything she got." Furious, Femi vowed to make her pay. Mama Beserete took Kemi to her small home on the outskirts of Lagos. Though the house was humble, it was filled with warmth and kindness. For the first time in months, Kemi felt safe. She began to regain her strength, though the emotional scars remained. Say stayed by her side, becoming her protector. He vowed to help her reunite with her father, even if it meant risking his own safety. Femi intensified his efforts, distributing flyers and offering a reward for information about Kemi. One of the flyers reached Mama Beserete's neighbor, who recognized Kemi's face. She immediately informed Mama Beserete, who decided it was time to contact Femi. Before Mama Beserete could contact Femi, Jide discovered Kemi's location. He barged into the house, demanding that they hand her over. But Mama Beserete stood her ground, calling for help. The commotion attracted neighbors, and Jide fled, realizing he was outnumbered. Mama Beserete knew time was running out. She called the number on the flyer and told Femi, "I have your daughter." Femi rushed to the address, his heart pounding with anticipation. When he arrived, he saw Kemi standing in the doorway, thinner and more fragile than he remembered. "Kemi," he called, tears streaming down his face. Kemi froze, unsure if it was real. But when Femi embraced her, she broke down, finally allowing herself to feel safe. Although Femi was overjoyed to find Kemi, she struggled to trust him. "Why didn't you protect me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You left me with her, and she destroyed me." Femi tried to explain, but Kemi's pain was too deep. Mama Beserete intervened, encouraging both father and daughter to seek counseling. She knew healing would take time, but she believed their bond could be repaired. Busy, now cornered, decided to flee Lagos with Tond. Before leaving, she made one last attempt to sabotage Femi's efforts by spreading false rumors about Kemi. She told anyone who would listen that Kemi was mentally unstable and had fabricated the abuse. Her plan backfired when one of her old neighbors came forward, recounting the times they had heard Busy yelling at Kemi or seen her starving the girl. The police added these testimonies to their growing case against her. Kemi reluctantly agreed to see a therapist, encouraged by Mama Beserete and Femi. At first, she was hesitant to share her experiences, but as the sessions continued, she began to open up. She talked about her mother's death, her father's absence, and Busy's torment. The therapist encouraged her to find an outlet for her emotions. Kemi discovered a love for storytelling and began writing her experiences in a notebook. Jide, now wanted by the police, realized Busy was only using him. Angry and desperate, he turned himself in and offered to testify against her. He revealed her plans to cover up Kemi's suffering and detailed her history of manipulation. The authorities used his testimony to issue a warrant for Busy's arrest. Tond, who had always followed his mother's lead, began to question her actions. After witnessing her growing paranoia, he secretly contacted Femi. "I want to help," he said. "I didn't know it would get this bad." Tond provided crucial information about Busy's whereabouts, leading to her capture. Busy's trial became a national spectacle, with media outlets covering every detail. Witnesses, including neighbors, teachers, and even Tond, testified against her. Kemi faced her stepmother in court, bravely recounting her suffering. Kemi moved back in with Femi, though their relationship required rebuilding. She began sharing her story at schools and community events, inspiring others to speak out against abuse. Femi established a foundation for abused children, naming it after Kemi's late mother. Kemi excelled academically, earning a scholarship to study creative writing. Sei, with Femi's support, returned to school and dreamed of becoming a lawyer. Mama Betrayal remained a close friend and mentor to Kemi, helping her navigate life's challenges. Kemi discovers a love for drawing, using art to express her emotions. Sei, with Femi's support, returned to school and dreamed of becoming a lawyer. Mama Betrayal remained a close friend and mentor to Kemi, helping her navigate life's challenges. Busy was sentenced to 20 years in prison, and Jide received a reduced sentence for his cooperation. Kemi published a memoir titled Silent Cry, which became a bestseller and sparked conversations about child abuse in Nigeria. At the book launch, Kemi thanked those who had stood by her, especially Femi, Sei, and Mama Betrayal. Kemi's journey from suffering to triumph becomes a beacon of hope for others, showing that even in the darkest times, resilience and love can prevail.